In this Rise of Kingdoms video, I want to talk about the problem with Nevsky testing. Specifically, I have been struggling with what is the right methodology to learn the things we have to learn about Nevsky to get better trades, to win in Ark of Osiris, to win in KVK. So stick around in this video for my thoughts on exactly how you go and test Nevsky to learn, is he one of the best rally and swarming commanders in the game or not? Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and this video has been sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms. And last night, we were doing some Nevsky testing, which I'm going to be showing in the background, and it involved a bunch of swarming. But it got me thinking, while I appreciate that Nevsky has these skills that make him stronger when you are swarming, is that even a valid way to test him to see if he's worth using or not? And I realized, actually, there's a lot of structure we can put to this. P.S. Chisgule from the future here. I realize now it's probably important that I specify why it is everybody cares a lot about swarming with Nevsky. And that is because when you are swarming a target, you have a huge defense reduction that you apply, 45%. Also, there's this skill over here, making it so that troops led by this commander deal 10% damage to a surrounded garrison and take 5% less damage from a surrounded garrison. That's a grand total of 15%, which is really quite fantastic. But you just got to keep in mind it only applies during a swarm, which is why testing for Nevsky to this point has been just so confusing as to, like, what is the right way to go and test him? Do we care more about the swarm results, or do we care more about other stuff? And that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Okay, there's 3 scenarios that we care about. The first scenario is Ark of Osiris. It does not matter how many severe wounds you have in Ark of Osiris. You just want to win. So when we think about who's better or who's worse, there's Ark of Osiris considerations, which are different than KVK considerations. And in KVK, there's even 2 key scenarios. There is the most common scenario by far, by a long shot. This is the one thing we really need to be thinking about, in my opinion. And it is characterized by a rally and a garrison duking it out with no one really having field control per se, or sort of fighting for it. And over the course of a fight, how's the trade? You're not going to burn the garrison, probably, for most rallies. It's just a rally that at some point you have to cancel because the fight has gone on long enough and you can no longer reinforce it, okay? Now, on the flip side of things, if the garrison was going to burn, then you were going to swarm it anyways, right? Once it got low enough, probably, if you were in a meta kingdom doing meta things. So once you start to get to the point where you're swarming it, it doesn't even matter anymore what happens beyond that point. You're burning that garrison. If you have enough swarmers that start at the right time and they can't fill the garrison anymore, you're going to win, right? It's the reason you cancel the rally. If you can't fill the rally anymore, the garrison's going to win. So the only piece of that test that we care about is actually the middle part. What happens in the scenario where you launch the rally, they do a great job of keeping it full, such that it never gets to the point where you can swarm it in a trade positive way? Because unlike Ark of Osiris, where, hey, look, like, we can have a test where I swarm the garrison in Ark and you swarm the rally in Ark, which is what we're doing here, by the way, because we're learning for Ark in these tests, by the way. But for KVK, you just care about the same thing that we've been doing in testing in Ark of Osiris matches all for like years, which is you just launch the rally and maybe just run it till the end. But I'm going to talk about that more in a second. There is another scenario that we need to talk about in KVK, which is the crazy swarming urgent burn situation. In other words, if you urgently need to burn a garrison, you are going to launch a rally and you are going to have 12 marches swarming that thing as the second the rally hits. And at that point, you actually don't care about the trades either. I mean, you obviously, it hurts, but you are swarming from the start of the fight because you want to win. And you need to burn that flag in a time-sensitive way. You are in Kingsland, or you are trying to get to the RCF, which was the case last KVK. We dealt with this, where 556 was battling into our starting zone, as was 846, 2 of the strongest kingdoms in the game. We were defending against them, and they were in a time crunch to get to our RCF to claim end of KVK rewards, which we were able to stop them. So they were right for just crazy swarming every freaking flag they could get their hands on, because they wanted to burn that flag as fast as they could. And the reason you crazy swarm like that is so that you can put so much pressure on the garrison they can't fill it fast enough. And then you actually end up trading positive because you are swarming so intensely that they can't keep up. So there's a weird like way through that situation where you start swarming at the start of the fight where you actually can trade positive. So which of these three situations do we care about? That's really important to understand. I am going to make the argument the situation we, again, care about the most is the normal situation, characterized by rallying until either the garrison gets low and you start swarming, or you cancel the rally because you can't fill the rally anymore. And you care about the part leading up to the swarm or the cancel, because that's the part where you spend most of KVK sending troops to die. That's where it's happening, right? Now, there are problems with accuracy, specifically with testing in Ark of Osiris and testing in general. And I just want to highlight a few of these problems that make this even more complicated. The first is that commanders have skills and talents that change with effectiveness or change in their effectiveness as the fight evolves, like YSS doing 20% more all damage, or talents that give you more damage for being low on the number of troops you have. This changes the context of the fight because technically in a KVK context, you will often have low health marches still in the garrison, and you actually technically can start with that 20% all damage right from the start of the fight, whereas in your typical Ark of Osiris testing, people aren't creating that same environment. Also, obviously, not nearly as much reinforcing happens in an Ark match as happens in KVK, and this is in part because in Ark of Osiris, you can only bring one march to a structure or one march to a rally. So, like, it's not like you could fill that garrison with many marches, all from the same player, for example. And there's one other problem with accuracy that you'll see this in KVK, and this even happens in Ark, which is, do you swarm the rally or do you swarm the swarmers? Which of those is actually the better play? And there's debate that could be made there, depending on the presence of the enemy and what you're trying to accomplish. Is it Sev wounds or is it something else? So what actually matters in all this mess, Chisgule? What do we actually need to learn now that Nevsky is here, baby? And I think the simple thing we need to learn now that Nevsky is here is he a better rally combo than what we already have access to? It's a simple question, right? Is he actually better in a rally combo than what we have had up to this moment in time? And the reason, by the way, I haven't gone all in on Nevsky testing right now is that in a couple days, I'm probably maxing Bert the second that he lands in game. Bert, also known as Batra, or however the heck you're supposed to pronounce it. I swear I am actually trying and just bad at pronouncing these things. Given that Bertrand is going to arrive, Batra is going to arrive really soon, I'm pumping the brakes on doing a bunch of testing because I'm going to test when he gets here, because I think he is possibly going to be a part of a meta combo. Granted, I think he's going to have a downfall, but what can we be looking at right now? And what is the actual methodology I would recommend for learning this thing we need to learn? Is Nevsky better as a rally combo? And for teams that are fighting an Ark League, the thing that you care about, and there's three situations, right? I presented them before. Ark, KVK normal situations, KVK urgent situations. So for Ark of Osiris League, or Ark in general, you only care about who is the last person standing. Did you win or did you lose? You do not care about Sev wounds. Heal those troops. Don't be a baby about it. Let's freaking go. You're trying to win, not be efficient. So the question then is this methodology of swarming right away good or not? And I would say yes. Immediately swarming makes sense. And we try to offset this in testing by having the same number of people swarming the rally as we have swarming the garrison. But this is sort of problematic because in Ark, I still will ask you this question, what makes more sense? Should we be swarming the swarmers or swarming the rally? And if there's really powerful debuffs like Guan silencing your garrison, I'm going to make the argument that you probably should swarm the Guan before you swarm the rally, potentially, okay? So Ark testing is one situation. Last person standing really matters, and in that case, a lot of the testing that you're seeing here is exactly what you would want to be doing, with the exception of who do you swarm. For a KVK normal situation, the thing that we care, 90% of players care about the most, and I'm making that number up. I pulled it out of thin air, but you get the idea. There is a rally. There is no swarming at all. We're reinforcing the garrison or the rally many, many, many times, and all that matters is the part before the swarm. And in that instance, most garrisons are going to stay high enough that you're not swarming. If the garrison, again, gets so low that you would swarm it, you're going to win that fight anyways. It almost doesn't matter who the captain is at that point, because you're already going to win. It doesn't even matter who the rally is at that point because you're going to win. And sure, you could do better or worse, but like you're going to win. So what we care about, again, is that huge chunk of time in the middle where we spend the majority of our time losing our troops. So the methodology in that case, I think, in a perfect world, if you're using YSS and commanders that care about the health of the garrison, you get a bunch of marches weak to activate YSS buffs right away. You put them into the garrison, or you only compare test results where you have all YSS garrisons. So it's apples to apples, okay? So, for example, Xeno YSS versus a JAD YSS. You don't need to go through this extra step of getting low health to get the extra damage, right? And you rally to defeat with no reinforcements. That's option one. Option two is that because things get weird toward the end of the fight, you might just cancel the rally after some amount of time and see, after 1 minute has elapsed or whatever the predetermined amount of time is that you figure out, how does it do, right? And that would best simulate a situation like you have in KVK where you're going to cancel. And I know that there's a little more nuance to it, but I think those two methodologies for this important situation, the one we care about the most, is the same way, more or less, we've been doing this testing for a really long time. So although it's very tempting, and it's very important even, to test swarming for Ark of Osiris, I would argue for KVK concerns, not so much. And for the final form of KVK testing where it's an urgent swarm, like the attackers are not doing this for trades. I'll say that again. They do this for progress. If the defender doesn't get control of the field or have cities strategically ported, you're just going to lose for sure. Like, you're not going to be able to sustain defending with 2 million troops against a rally that's got 2 million troops plus 430,000 troops in 11 marches, right? You've got like 6 million troops plus swarming into 2 million. Like, the 2 million are going to get pwned. You can't sustain. So in this situation, the thing we really need to learn is what garrison can get the best trade or hold the longest before falling. The flip side of that is what rally does the most catastrophic damage possible and wins the fastest. And this is really important. I feel like as a community, there's an aspect of attack stats that I've been saying for literally like half a year, maybe longer, that we keep not looking at it because it keeps not being as important, but we need to remember that attack makes fights end faster. More attack stat means faster conclusion to the fight, which actually matters a lot in Ark of Osiris, which actually matters a lot in this urgent swarm situation. You actually value attack stats much more than you would otherwise, because the point is to get so much pressure that the enemy can't keep up. And you do that, again, with lots of damage and overwhelming presence beyond what the enemy can do. And the enemy can only defend in this situation, really, if they have a bunch of cities strategically ported around the flag, such that even if they can't even contest the field at all, they can constantly microfill or stuff that garrison with troops such that you are battling into a full 100% 2 million troops constantly, and all those swarmers are going to get into some serious trouble. And when they get low, they have to either back off or start getting just catastrophic trades. Let's go look at the numbers from the testing that we did here. We tested a bunch of Nevsky combos, and I think another round of testing is absolutely needed to go and see what is the best Nevsky rally. And I'm kind of pumping the brakes on this until Bertrand arrives. Bert. I should just stick to Bert, man. That's the only way I'm going to save my face here. Save some dignity. That, or I need a coach on how to pronounce all these names. Gosh bless. So here's the actual results from the testing that we did. And big shout out to Teddy for organizing this and everybody who attended. These are mostly swarm results with a little bit of just like rally it and see what happens. So let's get started here. And keep in mind, we tried to keep things roughly equivalent with gear in the rally, gear for the garrison, all the stats, blah, 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 right? We've got about an even trade here with Xeno YSS against XY with Nevsky. Okay, that's definitely interesting. Garrison's not entirely full, for what it's worth. We're missing 8,000 troops, but the rally is also missing troops. Actually, I remember now that we canceled this one and relaunched, but it's worth pointing out that even with way less troops, this rally lost, but still had an even trade, this is going to be telling. You'll see, okay? So we do that thing again, this time actually filling the rally and actually filling the garrison, And of course, you would expect the results get better. XY with Nevsky is absolutely phenomenal, man. It's really strong. It's really strong. Now, what I think is a good way to do a test like this would be to then compare to like a combo that we're used to, like XY with Chandragupta, and see how does it compare to this result. But in this case, we wanted to just test a lot of Nevsky combos, and we wanted to test Jad YSS and Xeno YSS and see which is actually a better garrison. And in this report, we had 96,000 to 69,000 in favor of the rally again. So the rally is still looking very, very strong. And generally between like the Xeno garrison and the Jad garrison, I lean towards Jadwiga as the preferred commander or combo that I would use. And that's in part because Xeno's just so vulnerable to archers. Whereas, I don't know, like the Pakal Herald rally, like it's nasty, but I'm not quite as worried about it. Here is Xeno YSS against Nevsky with William. Again, gears roughly equivalent, talents sorted out. This was in favor of the garrison. So a part of what we're looking at here is, you know, hey, William's got a big damage factor that he does to swarmed targets. Both Nevsky and William care about the target being swarmed. What if you smash them together? And, you know, this was a swarm-related test, but the problem is that that rally is also itself very, very vulnerable to swarming. We run the same thing against the Jad YSS, and this is close, 75,000 to 69,000. I think that because of the healing of the Zenobia, that's why there's more sevs on both sides. The fight kind of runs a bit longer, but it also isn't doing quite as much damage, which the fight ends a lot faster with the Jad YSS. And then, let's get a look here. Xeno YSS versus XY Nevsky, no swarm now. So now we're running the first combo we were doing again, XY Nev, but no swarm, and this is heavily in favor of the XY Nevsky, the thing I would want to do now. And this, by the way, is representative of the most common scenario. Just, you know, launch the rally. Obviously, there's more nuance to that. I explained all that nuance earlier. But I think that now I would want to see XY with Chandragupta and compare and see which one is more performant. Here it is again. I wanted to see it again. And I think we might have even had a troop type problem in one of these particular reports. Yeah, so we have a bunch of calves in here. And what I find really interesting is that even though we had a bunch of calves in that report, it's about the same outcome when we actually switched it up to infantry. Slightly more sevs on the opposing side. Slightly more. So, like, honestly, having the wrong troop type is not nearly as bad as you would think with a Xeno garrison in particular. That's actually the strength of the Xeno garrison, is that she is a lot less concerned about having the right troop type to still be performing nearly at her peak. So, still very heavily in favor of the rally. And then we compare to the Jad, and it's honestly like about the same, which is very, I think, favorable to XY Nevsky. But I will mention that Cam is using Arabia. I'm using Ottoman civilization. I think that if you're rallying calves, it's just like a very, very, very obvious choice to be Arabia. 5% all damage is freaking amazing. And the extra cav stats are nice. And the cav special unit very slightly skews the nature of this report, but barely at all, quite frankly. And it's important to mention that what we need to look at with a YSS report is the sort of relative nature compared to other garrisons or other rallies, because YSS gets 20% all damage, which I know that doesn't sound like it's that much. What does 20% all damage do? But it completely changes the nature of the fight, and he only gets that boost when he's below 50%. So this fight looks very, very different if he has that buff from the very start, which he does not here. And then we've got a little garrison swap here. We go back to swarming. Now we use Nevsky with Chandragupta, and that did not do as well. The Nevsky Chandragupta, I guess, is more susceptible to being swarmed. The upside of bringing Chandragupta at all is that he is going to debuff the garrison to lose defense and lose health, which I will point out is not something you need to have in your rally, just like the Nevsky is not something you need to have in your rally to debuff the garrison on defense. That could easily just be a swarming march if you want the benefit of those debuffs. We've got some swarming reports here, and then we put Jad into the garrison, try out the same thing, and actually, Nevsky with Chandragupta did better against this combo, weirdly enough. Now, we're running a very small number of tests here. The sample size is way too small to be definitive. We're just trying to get a very rough sense of kind of what is happening. And then the rest of those reports are swarm reports. So what conclusions can you take away from this video? I think that the most important conclusion is probably around the process for testing, so that when Bert arrives in the game, we know exactly how we want to go test him. And in my opinion, that is just going to be launch the rally and then run it till the end. Or launch the rally against the garrison and then cancel. And if you're being really technical, you could maybe go and repeat a process for having YSS do the 20% all damage from the start. I think that is probably less representative of Arc, but if what you care about is Arc of Osiris results, then the swarming is totally spot on for what you should do. The question then becomes, what should you be swarming? And from a testing standpoint, it is just a lot easier to just count the swarming on the rally and just have you do that rather than try to swarm individual marches and figure out a pecking order and all of that. I know we're all kind of wondering, what is the new rally going to be? But I very strongly feel like until we have Bert in game and we can launch some rallies with him and see, we're really not going to know what the meta combo is going to be. And I will say that Bert, he does look pretty solid for those rallies. There's a lot of sort of theories floating around on how good he will or will not be. I'm a big fan of testing to find out, though, and maybe I'll stream when I unlock him, and I will probably max him this Saturday. So combos I'm going to be interested in testing include Nevsky with Bert primary, I guess we could test with Nevsky secondary. We could see XY with Bert and see what happens there. I mean, there's just so many things that we will learn as soon as the full meta commanders, new commanders, have actually arrived. If you enjoyed this video, throw a like on here and consider subscribing. Testing is like really not straightforward at all, but hopefully this video puts some structure to how to think about it. And again, I'm going to have the link in the description so you can jump to where I wrote out like my entire thesis. So if you're a visual learner, you could go access that. Or if you're just looking for a video with a tier list for my predictions on how the meta is unfolding, I'll have a card up in the top for that video. It's my January 2022 tier list for the very best commanders, which of course I will be updating as soon as we've got testing for all these new commanders. So subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.